people who aren't here can get the second half of the notes. So I think what I'll do is I'm just going to cover up the answers and we'll talk about each of them. So what our goal is today is to really talk about how we use each of these labels and some diagrams and whatnot. Yesterday in class, I talked a lot about how like geometry is really picky. So the way you label things counts. And so we need to make sure that we're using the correct labels for all of our diagrams. And when we write a proof, all of those things, it's really specific. So if you don't have these definitions, you want to make sure there's an Edpuzzle in there that was posted yesterday to go back and get that after we meet. So if you flip this over, and I'll just kind of cover up what I have here, and I'll make it work. You'll see some diagrams. And so when we're labeling a diagram, we have to ask ourselves the question, give me 1 minute. I just want to get a blank piece instead of writing on the back of what I have here. We have to recognize what that is. So decide, is it a line, a segment, or array? Okay, so is our first one here a line, a segment, or array? Which do we have? And you can use the chat too. It's gonna be hard to do.
It's a line segment.
It's a line segment, so it has no arrows. Now, when we label it, does it matter if I call it RT or if I call it TR?
No.
No, because it's the same both ways. So I can either write segment RT or I can write segment TR. Either one is fine. So I write this isn't drawing a new, I notice I didn't put endpoints on it. It's just notation. So I have a little line segment above it. Same here. Don't leave that out though. Okay, one or the other is fine. On our second diagram, what do we call that? So it's endpoint through arrow. Array, good. Yeah, and our array is the one that order matters. So this is a really important one where students lose points on all the time. Order matters here. So I have to go, my array notation goes endpoint to arrow. So the way my letters go have to match that. So am I going to call this ray BA or ray AB?
AB.
AB, yeah, I have to go endpoint to arrow the way that I label that. So even though B is like, if we think about how we read a book, comes first there, when I go across that diagram, it has to go AB. BA would not be, you'd get all points off for that, okay? There's our first two. Let's look at our, oh, see, I'm not gonna be able to do this very well. Our next one is a what?
It's a line.
It's a line, and does the order matter?
No.
No, so I could either call it line XY or line YX. So also notice here how that looks different than how I labeled my segments, okay? My next diagram is also a line. You can call it line MN or line NM. It doesn't matter, it's the same on both sides. This is tricky, having to cover up my work from first semester. The last two here, this is array. Is it ray CD or is it ray DC?
Love you. Hey, Mom, come here. Come here.
CD.
CD, yeah, it has to go point through arrow. Okay, DC would be an incorrect response. And our last one is a segment, so it can be RS or SR. Okay, but it's specific. You have to get used to writing things that particular way or else you'll lose points there. And then the way that we're told to draw diagrams uses the same labels. Now these are kind of little, the arrows on what it asks us to do. So here it says draw line AB. So go ahead and draw a line AB. That line can go any direction, and A and B can be anywhere on there. So I could have a diagram that looks like this, or I could have a line that looks like this, and I could write B first and A here. And with a line, there could even be like another point on there. Like there could be well, I don't like drawing it on the other side. There could be a C here. That's still line AB. Okay, as long as two of the points on the line are A and B, I can draw a diagram that represents what that tells me. It could look all sorts of ways. For our next one, it's hard to see. This is a end point, and that's a little arrow there. So what is that called? What are we drawing?
It's the midpoint.
Meaning, is it going to be a segment, a line, or a ray?
Oh, it's gonna be a segment. Oh wait, no, is that an arrow at the
That's a
end?
little teeny arrow. Yeah, it's hard to see on this.
So then that would be a ray.
Yeah, and so it doesn't matter. I could draw my ray this way if I wanted to. I need to have 2 points on it. Or I could draw my ray going this direction. Okay, it doesn't matter what direction the ray is going, but what does matter is that C is where the end point is, and D is on the side that the arrow is going through. So I could draw it this way, CD, or this way, C through D. 1 minute. What's wrong? Okay, that's okay. We'll fix it. It's okay. Okay. And then our last one's a segment EF. Okay, there's no arrows there, so I can draw that however I want. I could go crazy and write F first and then E. I still know that that's segment EF there. Okay. On our next row, we have a line. I can draw that however I want, whatever direction I want, and as long as G and H are somewhere on that line, I've drawn a correct diagram. Followed by a segment, and again, same idea. I just need to make sure I've identified 2 points on it. Make sure you're putting actual points. So here's the difference. When the directions here are to draw and label an example of each. When we're drawing an actual diagram, you need to have dots. So like what I've seen on students' papers before is something like this, X, W, but there's no points marked. If I'm drawing a diagram of a line or a ray or a segment, I should have 2 points on there somewhere like clearly identified. When I label it, so let me just move back up for a minute. When I'm labeling, the little notation has no endpoints on it. It's just a notation, a mathematical notation. That's how it looks. Okay, so also points could be taken off for like drawing. Sometimes what students do here is you see like they just redraw a smaller line like that. I don't want you to redraw a smaller line. I want you to put the letters right next to each other and then put the label on top. So labeling, we're not redrawing, labeling. They've asked us to draw, we should have the endpoints there. Our last one's array, and we've said this a few times, needs to start at X and go through Y. Okay, so that's our kind of intro to labeling. You use this a lot in the homework tonight, which I'll talk about before we head out. Because there's 2 on there that you're gonna have to skip for right now. Okay, so flip this page. So then we're going to be asked questions where we're just given a diagram. So here's our first diagram, and it says identify all the points, all the lines, and all the planes in the figure. So let's start with planes. I only see 1 plane drawn. There's 2 ways that I could identify what this plane is. What's one way that I could say what the plane is?
Say it's a rectangle.
No, like how would I label it using our like labeling rules? Plane M, good, yeah. So somebody wrote in the chat plane M to me. So this little letter here is labeling that plane. So I could call it plane M, or I could call it, we talked about yesterday in class. So the video you guys watch is not the live, it's last semester's video, so I'm not sure if I mentioned this. When we have a line, I'm sure I mentioned this, we only ever use 2 points. We never use 3 points to label a line. When we do a plane, you need at least 3 points to create a plane. So we always use 3 points if we're going to use our points to label it. So I can say plane ABC or in any order. Okay, but as long as I have 3 points identified, I can also label that plane by points or by the little letter in the corner. Now, what about lines? What's one line that's in this diagram?
B to C.
B to C. So I label that with a little line on top. And what's the other line in this diagram?
A and B.
A and B. Order doesn't matter there. You could have written it the other way around, still the lines. And then this is also something we talked about yesterday. My points, what are the points I have are A, B, and C, which when I use them to label, I'm not putting little points on top of it, but when I'm identifying the points, I have to put a point. So point A, point B, and point C are in this diagram. M is not a point. M is just a label of that plane. Okay, so those are our things that we have in that diagram. So now, see if you can do this next one. Label all the lines, all the points, and label the plane that you have in that diagram. Who can tell me what the plane is?
Plane X.
Plane X, yep, or you could call it plane LMN or any order of those points.
Yeah.
And what points do I have in this diagram?
M and M, L, N.
M, L, and N. And how many lines do I have?
You have 3 lines.
3 lines, so I should have 3 lines listed. So that's what I had down. And these could be, and I get, like I said, the letters could be reversed here. That same idea. Okay. And then it just goes asking us to create a certain document or a certain diagram. So it uses words like collinear. Collinear meaning that they're on the same line. So it says draw a figure for each description. Let me zoom out a little bit. Points R, S, and T are collinear such that point T is halfway between S and R. So it's a little tricky because it lists T last. So I could see someone just drawing a line and going R, S, T, they're on the same line. But T has to be located halfway between R and S. So here's my diagram marking they're collinear, meaning they're all on the same line, and T is halfway between R and S. And these tick marks are showing that this is the same length. You'll see that a lot in our diagrams. So now see if you can draw this one. It gives you A, D, and X, collinear, so same idea, and A has to be halfway between D and X. You should have something like this. So notice that here I took up my whole line and put R and S at the end and T in the middle. Here I drew a line and I put D and X pretty close together and I just put A in the middle, and maybe you marked it with tick marks here too to show that A is halfway between. Okay, but the points don't have to be at the very end of the line you draw. They could be anywhere, and there could be other points on here too. Doesn't matter, as long as on that line you have D, A, and X, and A's in the middle of those two. And then the last one is really similar. So A, B, and C are collinear, and we want to draw it such that point B is in the middle, and the distance between point A and B is twice the distance between B and C. So try to draw a line that would show that as best you can. Obviously, it'll be an estimate. And so this is what I have. And I use numbers here. So I'm saying this is 10 units of some sort and that this is only 5. So that this from A to B I've shown is twice the distance as from B to C. Okay, or you could have just tried to show that. You didn't necessarily need the numbers there. Okay. So this first set of notes is really just about basic labeling. The only other thing you have to do today is this homework. Now, on the homework, there's 2. We used to add something. We tried to do like shove this all into one day, the next few days. It was too much. And so this first homework still has a couple of problems we can't do. But what you're going to do on this homework is you're just doing exactly what we did on that first page, where you're just labeling what you see. Okay, and you're putting it down here. So you're writing the labels in. But there's 2 angles on here. So you cannot do number 5, and I'll go into classroom. I'll note this in the homework assignment too. Number 5 and number 16, we have not talked about angles yet. And just like everything else, they're super specific how we want to label. Okay, so don't do those 2 when you do your homework today. And then just upload the rest. And you're just putting all of your labels here. How would you label the diagram you see? Okay, and for something like this, you're not labeling the points and the plane. You're using the points to call this plane, whatever. Okay. Okay, so that's it. I think I have attendance for today. Don't log off yet. Let me read off what I have. And then if I don't have you, where did it? Oh, it's right here. If I don't say your name, can you just let me know? So this is who I have here. I have Ben, Orion, Riley, Connor, Richa, Cameron, Josie, Xavier, and Chelsea. Did I miss anyone as they came in? Okay, so you're all set to go. Work on homework 5. Make sure you submit it today. See some of you tomorrow. Keep it in there, don't you?
Every day.
Are you sure? Unique. Oh, that's a sweet letter. Thank you. Okay, just leave that over there for 1 minute. I have, oops.